Hey bookish friends, welcome back to my channel. If you saw the title of this video, you know today we're going to talk about my top books of the year so far. So we're now into mid-May roughly, so I'm going to talk about the books that I rated 4.5 stars and up. So 4.5, 4.75, and 5 stars from January to the end of April. So nothing that I've read in May will count for this video. So that being said, we have 12 books today to talk about, and I'm going to start with the 4.5s in the order that I read them this year, and then I will end with the 5 stars. The first book I rated 4.5 stars this year was The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. The best way to describe this book is almost like Hunger Games meets The Handmaid's Tale. So this is about these group of girls that are sent into the woods every year in this town to expel their magical powers from themselves. I think it's like when they turn 18, they have to go out into the woods and let their magic leave them so that they can then be purified and enter into marriage. And then you find out that everything is obviously not as it seems, and these girls are they're fighting against each other, and then you find out everything is not really what it seems. So not only are these girls battling each other in town for like the best eligible husband, but then there ends up being things they fight about when they're out in the woods secluded for months at a time. Definitely was surprised by this book. I picked it up at Ollie's. It was a Kindle Unlimited read. I don't know if it still is, but when I found it for like a few dollars, I decided to pick it up because the book itself is stunning. You see the character on the front. I assume that's supposed to be Tyranny, and there's this like red ribbon in her hair that's all kind of described in the book as well. But I really enjoyed this book. Definitely a shocking one for me. I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did, but highly recommend. The next book that I rated 4.5 stars this year was Ruthless Vowels by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book in the Letters of Enchantment duology, second and final book. And this was definitely more war and like high fantasy driven than it was romance. You do still have your romance between Iris and Roman, but it's definitely more about the war of the two gods that were discussed in the first book and why that war is going on, and you're getting more frontline experience and understanding of what's happening from the war front. I know a lot of people did not like this as much as Divine Rivals. I am one of those people, but I did still really enjoy this book. It was not 5 stars for me like Divine Rivals was, but I still really I enjoy high fantasy, so I still really enjoyed the story. And then in February, I read Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. I did read this on Kindle Unlimited. All of Lauren Asher's books are on Kindle Unlimited, but I loved this book so much I did purchase it because I want to buy Love Unwritten, I want to say, is the next book coming out this summer for this. It's pink. I want to buy this series because I loved this book so much. This is a childhood friends to lovers, kind of a second chance romance. This takes place at Lake Wisteria, which is in the final book from the Dreamland Billionaire series. This book takes place in the resort town that the final book in that trilogy takes place. And it follows Julian and Dahlia, who were kind of like frenemies when they were younger. Their families were very close, so they grew up together, and Dahlia ends up leaving town when she's younger and then comes back to town, and her and Julian literally run into each other. And from there, it's just immediate, like, at each other's throats, arguing, all this stuff. And the families are trying to get them to play along together. The mother, I think it's Julian's mother, is trying to convince him to let Dahlia help him redesign a house that's in the area because she's a famous TV star that designs homes. And he's reluctant to do it, but obviously eventually gives in, and they partake in this project together, and sparks fly, and the romance just takes off from there. And it was just so well written, their banter, the feelings like of animosity they have towards each other, but the understanding and explanation of why was just perfect. So I really enjoyed this book. I do not rate romance novels high. I think this is the only true romance that you're going to see on this list. So do with that knowledge what you may. I think the last romance novel that I rated 5 stars, and the only one in a long time, was The 7-Year Slip. But that was last year, so we're not going to talk about that today. Then in March, I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is the first book in the Shanghai series that she has. The second book is Our Violent Ends. I still need to get that. I'm waiting for it to come out in paperback. It comes out in June or July in paperback. And this is like a Romeo and Juliet retelling. You have Juliet and Roma, who are opposing heirs to 2 different gangs in the Shanghai area. And this is in like the early 1900s. Yeah, 1926. And then something happens, and this thing starts targeting both of the gangs, and people are dying, and They band together to try to figure out what's happening to save their gang. But the parents are still kind of at each other's throats, and they don't want to A, admit something's going on that's weird, or B, want to work with the others. But these two, who were acquaintances earlier on in life, do want to band together, and you know that there's feelings there, and that just continues to develop. The end of this book was such a good cliffhanger. I just immediately wanted to go into the next one, but I think it was on Kindle Unlimited. It was, so I may read it before the paperback comes out, but I have like 90 books on my physical TBR that I need to get to as well, so I may just wait until I buy it physically and read it. But this was also a very big shock to me. I thought I would like it. I didn't think I would like this book as much as I did, because the last Romeo and Juliet retelling I read was Olive E. Blake's One for My Enemy, which was like a witch take on Romeo and Juliet retelling, and I didn't love that book. I didn't hate it, but I really just didn't love the characters. But this book, wonderfully done. And the only horror book that you're going to see on this list was Stephen King's Holly. I also rated this 4.5 stars, and it is probably my favorite Stephen King book that I have read ever. I love Holly Gibney, the character. If you've seen my vlogs, if you've seen me talk about this book, you know that she's not a new character. This is not the first book she's in. It is actually the 5th book she is in his world that I am aware of. And this is her working for Finders Keepers, which is a private investigation agency that her and Bill Hodges put together in the Bill Hodges trilogy. And she's still working for them, and she gets asked by this mother whose daughter has gone missing to come to the town and try to figure out what's happened, because there's been other missing people goings on, I guess, in that town. And she ends up meeting this like really eccentric, weird couple. I think they're both professors, or I know the man was. Yep, they're both professors. And they are definitely not what they seem to be. And this was a book where, like, you know what's happening, and you know what's going on behind closed doors with them and what Holly's missing. So it was like very adrenaline pumping, because you know how close she is to danger the whole time, and she doesn't realize what's going on until she does. And it was just so well written and so fast paced, and different than a lot of his horrors. Like, it was gross. There were definitely, I would look up trigger warnings and look up some warnings about stuff that happens in this book, because it did take me by surprise. I was okay, but it was something I probably would have wanted to know about prior to reading it. But I very much enjoyed this book. This is his newest release, other than there's like an anthology of stories that he has coming out, I think, in May. So that will be his newest one. But novel-wise, this is his most recent release. This next one may be a surprise, but I really enjoyed Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. A lot of people were saying that if you read Powerless by Lauren Roberts first, you would not enjoy Red Queen as much, because she used this book as her inspiration for Powerless, so they were very similar. And yes, they were, but they were also different in their own unique ways. And the writing in this book I thought was more mature than Powerless. I think they're both YA. I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. I know Powerless is YA. I'm pretty sure Red Queen is considered that. But I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the writing style. I enjoyed the characters in this and their banter and their interactions with each other a lot more than I was expecting to, based on other people's opinions of it. I have the second book, Glass Sword, on my TBR. I plan on reading that this month, so keep an eye out for a vlog that will be in. A very specific vlog that will be in. And I'm very much looking forward to reading the rest of this series. The stories are, yes, similar, but unique in their own ways, and the worlds are unique in their own ways, I think. So still give it a go. I know that there's people, like I said, saying that don't bother if you've read Powerless, but like, you're gonna like things that other people don't, and people are not gonna like things that you love. So don't let someone else's opinion drive the books that you run, as I'm giving my opinion about books that I thought were the best ones so far this year. But again, these are my opinions. But basically, the point of this book is that there are Silverbloods and Redblood people in this world, and the Silverbloods are considered the elites. They have powers. The Reds are just like these normal people, and our main character essentially discovers that she has powers that she didn't know she had, and she shouldn't have, because she is Redblood, not Silverblooded. So there's betrayal. There's a little bit of a love triangle. I don't know. The endings were different from the first books in these series, so give it a shot. It read really quickly, so I'm pretty sure it's YA, but I still recommend this regardless of other opinions that I've heard. Next is the one book that I do not have a physical copy of, and that is not by choice. I cannot find this book anywhere but Amazon, so I am going to be ordering it within the next week because Amazon's going to be having a book sale. So, actually, this will come out. No, actually, the day that this video comes out, Amazon is having a book sale. So hit them up. It is supposed to be the book sale of your dreams. So hopefully you see this on May 15th when this comes out, because this is the first day of the big sale. But anyway, The Veiled Kingdom by Holly Renee is a book about these two characters that meet in weird circumstances during this war. She is a princess that has escaped her father because he was hiding her away and she just didn't want to be hidden in the castle anymore. So she escapes him during this like raid on the castle by this rebellion group who this other character, Dacre, is a part of. And when he comes to save his sister, who's been captured by the palace guards, as well as Nira, who's the princess, is with Dacre's sister when she is captured. And she has this fake rebellion tattoo, so his sister's like, you need to bring her with us because she'll just be killed if she's left here. So he reluctantly agrees, and there's immediate like hostility between the two of them, and they're fighting. And he takes her back to their headquarters, and she starts training with them, and nobody really knows who she is because nobody has seen the princess in years, so they don't know that it's her. And she's obviously keeping that a secret because she doesn't want them to kill her, but she continues training with them. The war is going on, and her relationship with Dacre, as well as his sister and his friend, is changing and growing in different ways depending on the person you're talking about. And he has this like possessive nature about her. Like he tells everybody he hates her, but he doesn't want anyone else dealing with her. Like he wants to be the one that trains her. He wants to be the one that like deals with her, but he says he hates her. So it's like that, like at each other's throats, kind of true enemies to lover romance. And the end of the book was such a good cliffhanger that had me like shook. I cannot wait for the second book to come out. I believe it's called The Hunted Heir, and I think it comes out in June or July as well. There's a lot of books coming out in June and July this year. But I'm so excited for it, and I will get a physical copy of this book because it was wonderful, and it is a beautiful book. It is a beautiful book. So, very excited to get my hands on that. Very much recommend. Also was a 4.5. And then the final 4.5 for the beginning of the year was The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This was one of the Book of the Month, Book of the Year finalists from last year, which is how I got my hands on a copy. But I've heard a lot of people rant and rave about this book. This was wonderful. It was like the best way to describe it in my mind is like Willy Wonka for book lovers. It's about this girl that had a really rough childhood and really connected with this like book series, which coming from someone who lost herself in the Harry Potter series and the Hunger Games series and the Divergent series growing up, like I completely connected with our main character in this. And as an adult, she's trying to adopt this boy and she can't scrounge together the money that she needs to do it, basically. So this author has not written a book in years and all of a sudden gets out of his funk and decides to write this book, and he writes one copy and holds a competition for his 4 biggest fans from when they were children. So it's like 4 people around her age and 3 people plus herself that go to compete for this book, because then they can do whatever they want with it. Essentially sell it to a publishing company and make the money off of it, and then the book can also be published for other people to read. There's a very beautiful story about her and this little boy that she's trying to adopt's like relationship and how it happened and how close they are and how she's trying to save him from having the same fate she did. And a story of the artist that lives with this author on his Clock Island, which was the name of the book series, and how he has to like cope with things that have happened in his life, and then her obviously as well. And it's just beautiful. It really caught me with the emotions at the end. I didn't think it was gonna cause me to like almost cry. I almost cried. So it's a very short read, but was so beautifully written and so easy to like relate to these characters that I definitely think if you love books, which if you're watching BookTube, you probably do, that you'll love this book. Then I have my one and only 4.75 rated book for the year so far is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. It is the first book in the Six of Crows duology, which is the second part of the Grishaverse for Leigh Bardugo's books. Follows the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and it follows different characters. So this is about Kaz and his band of misfits, I guess you could call them, that he assembles to go on a heist that is supposed to make them all a ton of money and help them get out of the situations that they're in, or like better the situations that they're in. So they all have their own reasons for wanting to go on this heist. And the book is essentially about him assembling the team and then them going on this heist and the things that come from that. It was the best way to say it. You also get a really good background on each of the characters because they all do have their own point of views. It follows all of them at some point in the book. It rotates through their point of views in the chapters, and they all have different stories to tell and different reasons for wanting to be part of this heist. I loved these characters. I loved this story. I have since read Crooked Kingdom, but it was in May, so stay tuned for the second third of the year because I will be talking about it then. This book was just so well written. I love Kaz, and I love the way she writes his character, and the way that this book was written, it was very like Sherlock-y, I think is even how I describe Crooked Kingdom, because Kaz is just like a mastermind when it comes to these kinds of heists, and it was so fascinating and such a quick read, and I loved it. Highly recommend. You do not have to read Shadow and Bone before you read these. You don't have to read that trilogy. I did. I don't think it'll take anything away if you read them out of order or only read this, but the Grisha-verse in general has just been very enjoyable to me, but for sure liked this duology better between the two different series. And now on to the 3 5-stars I've had at the beginning of the year. So the first was Iron Flame. I know this is probably controversial. I know a lot of people hated this book, but I loved it. I did not go into it assuming it would be rainbows and butterflies and unicorns. I knew that we were getting into a war. I know that this is a 5-book series, and that when you read a 5-book series, there's going to be conflict, things that are going to happen that you're not going to like. And that happened in this book. But I also think things happened that are important and imperative to the story moving along. Am I going to love every decision that Rebecca Yarros makes in these books? No. But that's her prerogative. It's her world. We're just living in it. So I loved the writing. Did the arguments between the two main characters get old after a while? Yes, but I don't personally think it took away from the story. I think their frustrations with each other were part of it and set up what happens in this book. So I was okay with it. I loved it. It was something I was very much into when I was reading the book. I still think about these characters every day. I go back and read parts of this book that I think about, which does not happen often. So that's how I know it's a 5-star read for me. So to each their own again, but this is the second book in the Empyrean series, follows Fourth Wing, and it just continues our story. I obviously can't go into detail about that. This was definitely more world building heavy and fantasy heavy than it was romance heavy. Again, like I talked about with Ruthless, Vowels, and Divine Rivals, but that makes sense in a series that is supposed to be a fantasy series. So I still enjoyed it. I love dragons. I love Terran so much. Terran and Adarna, they make these books for me. And that is why I still really enjoyed them, because their characters were still golden in this to be. Don't be scared if you've been putting off Iron Flame because you've heard some people's opinions. You may love it. My second 5-star, which is also probably controversial, was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This series has the potential to be my favorite series that she's written. And I know that not a lot of people think that. A lot of people love Throne of Glass and ACOTAR more. I love Throne of Glass more than ACOTAR, but I love the characters in this book series. I know a lot of people don't like Bryce and they don't really care for Hunt. I love them. I enjoy that we get a like urban fantasy in this, that you're actually seeing how the worlds of Sarah J. Maas's universes are colliding. Again, to each their own. I believe there's gonna be one more. I had heard people say that there weren't, but I think she did confirm there will be one more book, which makes sense, because there are 4 houses and we've only done 3 of them. The only house we haven't done is House of Many Waters, which makes sense that that's the next book because of how she set up a character in this one. I am looking forward to it. These books are gorgeous. They are chunky, but I find them so much fun and they're just entertaining, and the amount of characters that we get and all the side characters we get make these stories for me. So I still really enjoyed it. Even if you don't like Hunt and you don't like Bryce, there are so many other characters in these books that you can enjoy. They get just as much screen time, I think. Can't again talk about what happens in this because it is the 3rd book in a series, but I really enjoyed it. And last but certainly not least, because it is my final 5-star of the first third of the year, and probably my favorite book that I have read so far in 2024, and that is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. I talk about this book a lot in the vlog that I read this in, which was the Fantasy for a Week vlog that came out in April. So if you want my full opinion on it, please go watch that video. I do talk about this a little bit in my April wrap-up. All I can say is if you like a fantasy romance book, go read this. It is wonderfully done. It is a witch hunter romance where they both are trying to use each other to get ahead and it is done so well. And this world is so unique and so fun. And the pacing in this book was phenomenal. There was never a time that I was bored. Read this book. That is all I will say. So that is my 12 books that I have rated 4.5 stars or above so far in 2024. Only 3 5 stars so far. 2 were very much anticipated for me. 1 was a shock, but so far my favorite book this year. I think it's been a relatively good reading year this year. I'm not sure exactly where my rating average lands. I want to say it's like right under 4 stars. So that's a good year in my opinion. But I will come back to you all in a few more months, in what that would be the end of August. May, June, July, August. At the end of August, beginning of September, we will do this again, and I will talk about books that I read in the next 4 months of the year that I rated highly. And then the end of the year, it'll be exciting to see where all of these land on my final ranking of books for the end of the year. But those are so far my favorites of the year, highest rated of the year. I recommend every single one of these books. I know some are in a series, so may not be ideal. Some of them are the first book in a series though, so join me and the rest of the book community in being in the middle of about 50+ series. It's fine, we're all there. Let me know if you've read any of these books in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on them, if you're looking forward to reading any of them. And I thank you if you've made it this far in the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.